Hi, my name is Darren Bartlett, and I love discussing African affairs here on the African continent. So, to support me, all you have to do is subscribe so that you don't miss out on the daily stories that I put out. And it's always one good story that I think stood out for me in the day. Now, let's go to our friends here in Zimbabwe because USA released a report on the human rights situation in Zimbabwe, and this report is for 2024-2025. And if you go so many years ago, you realize that USA had sanctioned Zimbabwe because of so many reasons, including the abuse of human rights when it was still under Robert Mugabe. And when Emerson Mnangagwa came to power, we thought maybe there would be some light, at the end of the tunnel after the death of Robert Mugabe, or even the exit of him from power. Many Zimbabweans, or maybe many people around the continent or worldwide, thought finally there's going to be something different about Zimbabweans' rule. However, this report doesn't show that Emerson Mnangagwa is actually trying to resolve the issues that used to be raised and the reasons why the country was sanctioned, that he is actually trying to do something different from his predecessor. And this report is just a reflection of the many things that have been happening even before he came to power. Has he worked hard to resolve these things and bring back the Western countries as friends on the table so that they can have a harmonious friendship, but also remove the sanctions that were placed on the country? I don't think so. For example, so ahead of the August 17th SEDAC summit that was supposed to be happening in Harare, which actually happened anyway, 160 people were arrested, which included civil society activists, elected members of parliaments, religious leaders, union leaders, students, and journalists. All of them were arrested because they were protesting on that day, which protests are supposed to be a human right for people of Zimbabwe, or a global human rights, that anyone who disagrees with what is happening or they are demanding for certain rights, especially that are supposed to be human rights, people are allowed to protest. However, these were not allowed to protest because that number is so huge. 160 people in jail is not an easy number. And that it shows in the report that was made by the U.S. State Department. And also it's reported that on June 16th, police arrested over 70 people at a private event to commemorate the Day of the African Child at a home of Citizens Coalition for Change party leader Jameson Timber. Those, they felt that abused their rights. They're supposed to be commemorating the Day of an African Child, and arresting people at a private place, a private home. That was also included in that report, something that didn't augur well with many organizations around the world. And also, when it comes to June 24th, this report shows that 44 members of Zimbabwean National Students Union, including its president, Emmanuel Sitima, and also when they were arrested, they were required to pay fines because allegedly they committed what would call a disorderly conduct. There was a disorderly conduct by these people. So that report also includes such arrests, which they consider it violates human rights. That's what they believe it is. And not so many months ago, if you remember, on the 31st of July, this report also brings out, and I remember saying this story here one time, that there were some suspected state agents who pulled 4 activists off a plane before it actually took off from Harare International Airport. 4 guys were picked out people on a plane that was set to take off. Something very unusual, but I've seen it happen here many times. Though the one I have actually seen is when members of the opposition parties or leaders of the opposition groups or parties in some countries are actually picked off the plane by state agents when they arrive in the country. So there is no welcome, mammoth welcoming them or people. No, they just arrest them, take them to their homes or even police if necessary. So this was indicated in report and something that many people witnessed, especially in a plane where you see many international visitors, tourists, and so on, name it all. All those people witnessed this, and that was documented in the report. On 2nd of August, one of the opposition leaders for the party transformation of Zimbabwe, called Jacob, was arrested and charged for allegedly participating in the 16th of July event where police arrested over 70 members of a party. So he was charged on that, and say why? Because anyway, he participated in that event. So that was also documented. And every time human rights reports come out, let me tell you something. There is a pattern of members of the opposition, civil rights activists, and also journalists arrested. Once that shows up in the report, the rest may not be very significant, because these are the people who are literally the faces of what they would call activism in society. So that report is really detailed, and I would say that Zimbabwe finds itself in a very tricky position because of that. Of course, they're going to come out, the government of Zimbabwe will come out and refute what this report is, because that's what is done many times by different governments. Every time a report is released, they come out to deny and say that these are foreign agents that are trying to inflict or other policies or trying to disorganize countries through activism, politics, sponsorships of events that you would consider activism, So you need to look at that pattern there and say, you can look at it in Zimbabwe, look at it in Zambia, look at it in Tanzania, look at it in Kenya, look at it in Uganda, look at it in Rwanda. Everywhere you go, you'll always see about the word state agents, and many of these state agents are basically foreign countries that are actually helping in this process. But I don't know what you think, but that report is even deeper than the things that I've just talked about. But because my reporting is just for a few minutes, I will give you a full analysis of this report come this Saturday of this month, because that's when I do the roundup, and I'll be able to discuss every story in detail. My name is Dara, and I will see you in the next one.